Right, when Boris Johnson fell ill with COVID last April, his dog Dylan was reportedly also unwell, which raised the question in the media, did he have the virus?
From Monday, it will now be a legal requirement to report the presence of COVID in animals in England. Well, meanwhile, South Korean authorities are offering free tests to animals if they show symptoms and have been in contact with an infected person. So should we follow suit?
Well, joining us now to discuss this is Senior Vice President of the British Veterinary Association, Daniela Dos Santos, and her spaniel, Bridget Bones.
Great name.
Owner of the pet studio, Lisa Smith, and her German Shepherd, Boris, along with expert Nick Eade and Beverly's Boulevard Hills. Did I get that right?
We should probably congratulate everyone on their unique choices of dog names to begin with, shouldn't we?
Yeah.
Morning to you all. Thanks very much for joining us. So we're talking here about the issue of pets and, you know, how much fear there might be over whether they can be infected with the virus, whether there's an issue with, you know, them passing it on to other people. Let's come to you, first of all, Daniela Dos Santos, because as Senior Vice President of the British Veterinary Association, you can kind of give us a bit of an overview on this. There's this new law coming to effect on Monday. This is presumably for labs who are taking samples. This isn't for people who have their pets at home and are worried that they might be ill with the virus.
Absolutely. So what we're seeing at the moment is that there are tests available to veterinary surgeons for animals where they suspect COVID, but these tests are limited. So they're limited to pets that have come from COVID-positive households, to pets that are also showing the clinical signs, and where other far more common causes of respiratory disease, for example, have been ruled out. So the message is not to panic.
Danielle, I mean, how... Obviously, you're saying they're not to panic, but people are obviously going to be looking at their pets now, aren't they, and thinking about whether they can get ill and how it all works. So what would your advice to people be?
So I think it's important to say that globally, there has been a very, very small number of cases where pets have contracted COVID, and pretty much all of them have been in cases where they are living in houses with owners that have COVID. And there is absolutely no evidence that pets are then passing it back to owners. And even those pets that are showing clinical signs are showing very mild clinical signs and fully recovering.
So should we be following South Korea and offering free tests for pets that do show symptoms?
I'm not sure that we necessarily should. I think we have a good system in place already where in cases of respiratory disease, once the more common conditions have been ruled out, we can test. But as I say, there's been a very, very small number of cases globally of pets coming down with COVID, and certainly it is nothing to panic about.
And Nick, let's come to you, because I think you're in favour of people being able to test their pets, aren't you?
Well, I am. The thing is, Charlotte, you know, obviously we've had our dogs during lockdown and we've fallen in love with them even more so, and they're a really big part of our family. And I think if we have the opportunity to make sure that they're going to be okay and there's no transmission, etc., then I think it's a really important thing to do. And it's all about precaution. You know, we take our dogs to get wormed, we take our dogs when they've got sore teeth, basically to the dentist. So why don't we actually have them tested, and why don't we have them potentially inoculated if that's what's going to happen to them?
People are talking as well about this advice in South Korea to keep dogs at least 2 metres away from people and other pets when walking past them. I mean, do you think that's something that people should be aware of? Is that something you would do?
Well, that's the hardest thing, because this is probably the most sociable dog. She's more sociable than I've been for the last year. And that's the only problem. You know, obviously they go up to humans and they sit and humans pet them, etc. So I think that would be quite hard to do. But I do think if my dog was tested and I knew my dog didn't have it or was carrying it, then I'd let my dog be more sociable. But I think it's important just to be precautionary and to think about your dog and your pet as part of your family. And you do the same to your child. So with my child, I do the same too.
I mean, I'm looking at your dog and it's reminding me of my dog Peaches, who I'm missing greatly now. I mean, I don't know about you, Nick, but what are you like with your dog when you go on a walk? Because, you know, since we've been in the pandemic, I'll be honest with you, you know, usually I don't mind, you know, kids or adults running up to her and wanting to stroke her, but it has made me think twice about how, you know, free I should be with my dog and should I be protecting her more? So how do you feel about that?
Well, actually, I think at the beginning I was really precautionary and I made sure she was sort of kept on the lead and I kept her very close to me. And I still think now, I don't really let her socialise unless it's somebody or a dog owner that I know very, very well or who's in my bubble. I think it is important for us to make sure that, we don't know everything about COVID. We don't know exactly where it spreads, etc. So I think it's important for us to be safe and look after both our pets and ourselves and the people that the pets have been around.
Lisa, I was going to say, let's bring you in at this stage, because you work with a lot of dogs a day, don't you? About 8 to 10 dogs a day. What do you make of this? How do you feel about the prospect of testing pets?
My view, I really don't think it's necessary that we should test dogs. I think what it will do is just create a huge fear-mongering and scaremongering in and amongst our dog owners. And I think we've got to look at the other option, the other issues, the cost of testing on our dogs. Where's that money going to come from? Is it going to be free? Is that going to be a government-funded cost or additional cost? And then there will be an extra strain on our veterinary surgeons, because it will have to be an additional service that they will be looking to offer as well. And I just think for dog owners, it can create just this additional fear and anxiety. And if our dog is tested positive, then we've got the implications of things like, do we have to then self-isolate the dog? And is that dog going to be self-isolated within our home environment? Or will we need to look at an additional expense of perhaps putting them into a boarding establishment? Or will that lead to people maybe saying, well, I might have to abandon my pet, or I might have to put my dog into shelter, or even, in the extreme, look to euthanize their dog. So yeah. I think it just cause so many issues.
Which we don't want to get to that situation.
And coronavirus tests, they're not exactly the most pleasant experience to go through. Daniela, how easy would it be to carry out, a test on our beloved pets?
So I think we have to think about the process here. So we're looking at having to get swabs, potentially from the nose, from the back of the throat. But again, I just want to go back to the fact that we should not be panicking. There are very few pets across the world that have contracted COVID, all of which have come from COVID positive households. So practice good hygiene if you are COVID positive, wash your hands before and after handling your pets. But let's keep this in perspective. This is primarily a human problem. There is no evidence of pet to human transmission. So I would say, please don't panic.
OK, so your dog or, your cat might not have the coronavirus, but is it possible that they could still transmit it via their fur? So perhaps if someone who's infected with the coronavirus strokes my dog and then I stroke her, touch my face, is that a possibility?
It's a difficult one. So at the beginning of the pandemic, where we really didn't know very much about this disease, we were really cautious and saying, be careful, they could potentially act as fomites or surfaces. But the reality is, as time has gone on, we haven't seen any evidence to support that. Having said that, as the general message of the pandemic has been, practice good hygiene.
Nick, have you changed your behaviour at all since we've had the pandemic? And, you're obviously close there with your dog, about how you live and how you're in that area with her, because, I don't know whether you're one of these people that sleep with their dog, for example. There are those people that have their dogs in the bed with them, don't they? Maybe some people are thinking, do you know what, actually, is it time to put them in a bed on the floor rather than have them on the bed with me?
Well, actually, to be honest, the one big thing is, obviously, through this pandemic, our dogs, because we haven't been away from them so much, they've become very, very attached. And she does sleep on the bed, not next to me, but she does sleep on the bed. But one thing I have been doing is whenever I do go out and I walk her, I will wash her paws, even if they're not dirty. I will also obviously wash as soon as I get home. And I've been more precautionary in that respect. And obviously, if I see somebody like a neighbour or I see somebody in my bubble, I'm very much aware of hygiene, etc. So I think, I have been like that. But I think generally, as a population, we're all probably a little bit more aware of that, and we're all washing our hands a lot more. And she's much cleaner than she's ever been before.
Good to hear it. Well,
Good
listen,
on you.
It's been interesting to hear all of your perspectives this morning. Thank you so much for joining us.
And also, I think, just to put it into perspective, I think it's only one cat that is tested positive for coronavirus in the UK, in Kent. So, perhaps not necessary for the time being.